My name is Michael Grayson. I'm 42 years old, and 3 weeks ago I stood in my own living room listening to my wife turn me into a joke. Everyone laughed, her sister, my business partner, even my own brother. I remember raising my glass, smiling like it didn't bother me. But it did. It bothered me so deeply that I haven't stopped thinking about it since. I run a construction supply company in Cedar Falls. Started it 12 years ago with my best friend, Tom, working nights, weekends, and taking loans we could barely pay back. Now it's worth more than I ever imagined. But that night, all that success didn't matter. Because when Emily, my wife of 13 years, said, "Michael wouldn't survive a week without me," she didn't say it playfully. She said it like she meant it. And everyone believed her. Emily came into my life when I was 27, smart, ambitious, confident. She worked in real estate then, could sell a house in one conversation. I admired that. She admired my drive. We fit, or I thought we did. After our wedding, she said she wanted to help me build something real. 6 months later, she quit her job, said she wanted to focus on managing our life. At the time, I didn't question it. The business was growing. I was too busy to notice the shift. It started small. Little comments like, "You'd lose your head if I didn't remind you," or, "You really need me to keep you organized." I laughed it off. Everyone did. But then the comments turned into habits. She made plans, spent money, committed us to things, always in my name, never hers. Tom once joked that Emily ran the company more than I did. He didn't know how close that was to the truth. Because over the years, without even realizing it, I let her take control of everything outside the office, the house, the cars, the accounts. I thought she was just being efficient, but she wasn't managing our life. She was managing me. The morning after the party, I reached the office before sunrise and sat in my truck with the engine off, hands on the wheel, listening to the tick of cooling metal. Tom found me 15 minutes later and rapped his knuckles on the window. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just handed me coffee and waited. "Everything okay?" he said finally. "Yeah," I lied, "just tired." I wasn't tired, I was hollow. That afternoon, Emily called to tell me to swing by the boutique on Ridgeway and pick up a blazer she'd ordered for me. She wanted everyone looking polished for the wine and cheese thing she'd scheduled at our house. I told her I had a vendor meeting. She laughed like I'd told a joke and said, "Right, your little meeting. Be home by 6. When the call ended, something in me settled. Not anger, clarity. I started paying attention. Not to her words, to the numbers. Our personal Amity Bank card had charges I didn't recognize. Spa packages, business lunches that weren't mine, a weekend at the Elms Inn I never took. A new house fund account had been opened with my social ending in 3091, an account I hadn't created. And my company debit card, the one locked in the office safe, showed a $2,400 withdrawal I couldn't place. 2 days later, there was another, $8,900. I called our accountant, Hayes. He's a quiet man who never dramatizes. "Michael," he said, "I'm sure there's an explanation, but we need to reconcile these now." There was an explanation. It just wasn't one I wanted. That evening, I asked Emily at the kitchen island if she'd moved money out of the business account. She didn't look up from her phone. "I needed to cover deposits," she said. "Caterer, photographer, you know, things you forget." "That's company money," I said. "It doesn't work like that." She finally looked at me. "We're married. What's yours is ours. Stop being dramatic." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam a drawer. I just walked to my office and, for the first time in years, changed a habit. I opened a fresh legal pad and began a timeline. Dates, amounts, screenshots. I wrote like a man pulling lumber from a flooded house, piling salvaged beams where they could dry. The next morning, I met an attorney, Nora Patel. She'd negotiated 2 of our supplier contracts and never wasted a sentence. I told her everything. The jokes, the money, the new account, the safeguard withdrawals. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said, "You're going to feel disloyal for the next few weeks. That feeling isn't truth, it's conditioning. Here's what you do. She slid a checklist across the desk. Secure access, freeze cards, separate personal and business passwords, add dual authorization on transfers, document everything, then stop explaining. Let the paper speak. I left her office with instructions instead of feelings. That helped. By lunch, I'd changed every password. By 2, I'd placed dual signatures on outgoing wires. By 3, I'd frozen the company debit card. At 4, Emily called from a salon chair. "My card isn't working," she said. "It's not your card," I said. Silence. Then a short laugh I knew too well. "You're really doing this over money?" "It's not about money," I said, and hung up. She came to the office that night, eyes glassy, voice soft. She tried something new, sadness. "I've done everything for you," she whispered. "You know I have. I keep your life from falling apart." I thought of my first shop lease, signed at a folding table while she was at a winery with her sister. I thought of the winter we nearly missed payroll, and I ate canned soup 3 nights a week so the crew wouldn't feel it. "You don't keep my life from falling apart," I said quietly. "You keep me from noticing you've taken it over." She blinked hard, and the softness vanished. "You think you can just walk away from me?" she said. "I already did," I said. "It didn't end there. It never ends there." 2 days later, my brother texted that Emily was worried about my mental state. A neighbor called to say she'd heard I'd abandoned Emily. Her sister, Sophia, appeared at our loading dock and told Tom I was a coward. Tom told her the dock was for forklifts, not drive-by character assassinations, and shut the bay door. Then a certified letter arrived, petition for legal separation, allegation, financial control. Claim, I'd kept Emily from accessing funds, humiliated her, and withheld marital share of the business. The projection would have been funny if it hadn't landed like a brick. Nora read the filing and looked almost amused. "She just invited a full accounting," she said. "We'll RSVP, yes." We did. Hayes compiled 3 years of statements. Nora subpoenaed boutique invoices, hotel folios, and the application for the house fund account, opened with my social forged in the signature line. The audit took 3 weeks. The numbers didn't care who smiled at parties. They didn't care who told the better story. When the report landed, it was a ledger of a life I hadn't realized I was financing. $212,000 in personal wellness, $68,000 in home entertainment and decor, $19,800 in travel that never included me. And then the anchor, a joint credit card I'd never seen, opened in my name 2 years earlier, now at $74,600 with cash advances that mapped perfectly to the house fund deposits. "Fraud and identity theft," Nora said flatly. "We'll amend." Emily posted black and white captions about surviving male control. I didn't reply. Tom posted once, "Before you choose a side, ask to see the receipts." He didn't say whose. He didn't have to. Sophia recorded herself outside our office calling me every name she'd saved for men who stopped paying. Someone in the parking lot filmed her meltdown, and Cedar Falls watched it at lunch. The comments weren't kind. Mediation was in a glass conference room that overlooked a parking structure and a strip of gray February sky. Emily sat opposite me, flawless as ever, back straight, palms flat, the picture of unjustly wronged composure. Her attorney shuffled papers like stage props. Nora had one binder. Hayes had a single manila folder. The mediator asked for opening remarks. Emily's attorney spoke about partnership and sacrifice, about emotional labor and unpaid management. He said Emily had built the brand by curating a social network. He used my company's growth as proof she'd contributed. Nora didn't contradict the premise. She let it float. Then she opened the binder. She walked through the bank records calmly, page by page. She laid 2 copies of the house fund application on the table, one with a signature, one with my real signature from a vendor contract. She let the difference speak for itself. She slid in the boutique invoices with rush fee Sophia The Elms Inn folios with 2 guests, the cash advance slips with the same teller initialed each time. She ended with 1 sheet, a grid. On the left, withdrawals. On the right, texts from Emily on the same days, asking if I could grab milk, if I could pick up dry cleaning, if I could make sure to be home by 6. The contrast was almost artistic. The mediator turned to Emily. "Would you like to respond?" Emily stared at the table and said quietly, "This is humiliating." Nora didn't smile. "It's arithmetic." We settled that afternoon. Emily signed a statement acknowledging unauthorized withdrawals. She relinquished any claim to the company. We split the unauthorized card debt equally because Nora said a judge might split it anyway, and our goal wasn't vengeance. It was daylight. I kept the house, she took her furniture. We instituted a mutual non-disparagement clause with liquidated damages. It was clinical, final, and strangely merciful. The divorce decree came 6 weeks later. No shouting, no door slammed. A PDF in an email that ended a 13-year lesson. The town recalibrated slowly. People who had laughed at jokes about me began to nod in a different way when we met at the hardware store. A neighbor stopped me by the paint aisle and said, "I'm sorry, I believed things I shouldn't have." I told her there was no debt between us. She apologized anyway. Business didn't just survive, it breathed. Tom and I signed 2 new distribution contracts that had been hovering while the drama played out. We opened a second warehouse outside Des Moines. I promoted Greg, the quiet guy who knows every bolt bin by memory, to operations manager. He told me he'd never wanted a title, just trust. I told him the title came with trust baked in. I sold the big house, bought a smaller place with a clean backyard and a garage that smelled like cedar when I opened it in the morning. I put my coffee maker on a cheap metal shelf by the back door because I like the way the steam looks in winter air. Some mornings I stood there with both hands around the mug and realized nothing hurt. Emily's sister stopped posting. The performances require an audience, and the audience had moved on. I heard, without asking, that Emily took a receptionist job at a dental office. Same title she had when we met. Life has a way of reminding you where your real work begins. Months passed. I took exactly 1 photo off my office shelf, a magazine feature about Midwest growth leaders, with my face in a small square. I kept it, not because I needed the validation, but because it was the first profile that didn't add someone else's name to my work. It just said, Michael Grayson. It felt accurate. I started seeing someone, Lauren. She teaches 7th grade science and laughs with her whole face. On our second dinner, she asked about the company, then asked about the crew, and then asked what I do on Sundays when I'm not doing numbers. No one asks that last question unless they're paying attention. One night we were at a small place off River Road, and I saw Emily at the bar. She looked past me like I was a hallway. I looked at Lauren and asked about her terrible school copier that eats half the worksheets. We ordered dessert. We didn't mention the bar. A week later, Nora forwarded a notice. Bankruptcy petition, Emily. The judge denied any claim against me, citing the signed settlement and the fraud admissions. I didn't feel triumphant. Relief isn't triumph, it's the absence of weight. On a hot August afternoon, Tom dropped a newspaper on my desk. The business section had a piece on regional supply firms. We were a paragraph. Cedar Ridge Supply continued steady expansion, opening a second warehouse and adding 20 jobs. No photo, no quote. Just a line that felt like a hand on the shoulder. Keep going. That evening, my brother, Evan, came by. We tuned his truck on the driveway and didn't talk about anything important until the light went blue. Then he said, "I'm sorry it took me so long to see what was happening." I told him I hadn't seen it either, not clearly. "I confused silence with peace," I said. "They're not the same." He nodded and handed me a socket wrench. We didn't say more. We didn't need to. People think victory feels like fireworks. It didn't. It felt like grocery shopping without checking over my shoulder. It felt like signing a wire with Tom and not wondering who else would find their way into it. It felt like going home to a house where no one asked me to apologize for the space I took up. A year later, I drove past the old place. Someone had painted the shutters blue and planted hydrangeas along the walk. It looked better than it ever did when I lived there. I didn't stop. I took the long way to the shop, past the river where the water moves, even when you're sure everything is still. I don't tell this story to humiliate anyone. Humiliation was the currency that bought the worst years of my marriage. I tell it because men like me, quiet men who build things and believe we can outwork a hurricane, need to hear a sentence no one taught us. You don't have to live inside a joke to avoid a fight. Respect isn't a speech someone gives you at a party. It's an agreement you make with yourself and defend on paper when you must. When it's gone, you don't get it back with better punchlines. You earn it, nail by nail, ledger by ledger, day by day. Emily lives where she lives. I live here, coffee steaming in cold air, forklifts humming in the warehouse, Greg calling out counts without looking, Tom drawing a rectangle on a whiteboard that turns into a plan. Lauren sends me a photo of her class making baking soda volcanoes with goggles too large for their faces. I laugh like a man who knows what all this cost and why it was worth paying. If you've listened this far, you know what happened on paper. Legal victory, clean books, a business intact. But the part that matters lives somewhere quieter. It's the moment you stand in your own kitchen and realize the only voice you have to fight for is the one in your chest, the one that says, enough. So here's the question I ask at the end, not for her, not for the town, but for you. What would you do in my place? Keep the peace that isn't peace, or risk everything to reclaim the quiet that lets you live?